All right, peeps. On today's episode of the Kung Fu Genius, the genius will be attacking Goldenbell Training clickbaity vids. Lots of gems, lots of Bolo Yeung punching Bruce Lee, lots of, did you know, Steven Seagal had that CGI up on his hairline up and above the law? Let's get to it.
And every day, I practice martial arts. Watch out!
Yo, Dre, how you doing, man?
I'm schooling it, Sifu.
We're coming in with that hot Saturday energy, right?
Man.
They close
the
streets. They close the streets in front of the school for God knows what reason.
We're trying to get here for an hour.
I know, it took us an extra half hour to get here.
Right down on the corner.
Right downstairs. Gotta love New York traffic, especially crosstown traffic. No joke.
What about your boy though on the taxi? He's driving taxi, trying to make a secret turn.
Yeah, I think
in front of the cop.
For people who've never been to New York, they would have really enjoyed. We had a very New York moment right before we got into City Wing Chun this morning.
The street and
they blocked off this part of 6th Avenue for whatever reason, maybe a street fair or something like that.
Actually, it's marathon weekend, so it's the half marathon today and the full marathon tomorrow.
Oh, awesome. Great. Thanks, marathon people.
Yeah.
Adding half an hour to my commute and I can't park where I normally park. Thanks. So you can run. Yeah. All right. Jesus. Lame. There you go. Keep destroying your hips and ankles.
Yeah.
All right. So I can't park.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So anyway, there was a taxi that wanted to cut on this section of 6th Avenue, but it's closed.
Yeah.
And there was the parking cop, and he was like, hey, where do you think you're going?
Where?
And the guy's like pointing, he's like, I don't care what you're pointing at. You're not driving through there. But like, it was so great. He's like, I don't care what you're pointing at. It's a great New York moment.
Like, so come on, man. Let me drive in.
Before we get started, I just want to remind people that the best way to support the Kung Fu Genius podcast is on Patreon.
Yeah.
Patreon.com/the Kung Fu Genius. For as little as $5 a month, you can get access to episodes early and a bunch of other goodies that we put on there as well. And for higher levels of support, there's all sorts of other cool things you get, like a private episode with the KFG. As well as other cool translations and things like that. So patreon.com/the Kung Fu Genius.
Yeah.
So Dre, I have an idea today.
What's this idea, Sifu?
So
You're like a mad scientist.
Yeah.
When it comes to
something.
Yeah.
Not this podcast. I haven't spent enough time thinking about this podcast. When it comes to my Wing Chun training, yes. All right.
Okay.
If I put that much effort into this podcast, I think we'd be quite big.
You know what's interesting? I mentioned the mad scientist. Do you know who the mad scientist is, Mikey Deane?
Well, I know of a mad scientist.
Who's this?
A mad scientist. Oh, no, sorry, I'm thinking of the mad professor.
It's interesting you say that because on the way here we were listening to The Large Professor. And I was working a party last night where he DJ'd.
Oh, really?
He was a special guest DJ, Large Professor. Extra P, the Mad Scientist, was pretty awesome. And what's cool about the Mad Scientist is he debuted Nas.
Yes, of course.
On one of his singles, which was really cool.
I recognize the name.
And Sifu and I were listening to that on the way here. And what did you think about that?
Can I talk about Kung Fu on my podcast?
Of course.
Can I get my podcast back?
So we're not doing the hip-hop episode then?
No. All right.
I thought that was the idea.
What are you even talking about?
I thought you had an idea to do the hip-hop on the podcast
I was about
today.
to talk about what my idea was.
Yeah.
So
I thought
this
that
dude
was
can
it.
ramble on to our uninterested listeners about what we listened to on the way over here.
Well, maybe they should be interested.
Maybe they are interested in what we listen to on the way here.
You know, the funny thing is I can name at least 2 or 3 of our listeners that love drum and bass.
Oh. Is that many?
No, there's not that many people like drum and bass who can like that. So it's just dog shit. It's like you take a like an aging monkey in a zoo and put him in front of a synthesizer and like go make music and you just let him do something for 5 seconds and then you just loop that 5 seconds for 80 minutes.
Hate it, you know what I'm saying?
Oh yeah,
it's too close to home because it's accurate.
Snap!
How does that? No,
I have no idea what that is.
Is that drum and bass?
That is not drum and bass. First of all, no, that's like more house. Because it's like you're doing it like 126, 127 BPM. Drum and bass.
All right, guys, I'm going to check out here. I'm just going to leave it to these 2 guys right here.
That's drum and bass.
All right.
No, it's not.
The KFG on the
How low can you go?
on the drum and bass hour here. All right, so please, I don't want to spend so much time talking about ridiculously awful music. All right, I would much rather discuss the total
drum and bass
discography of Debbie Gibson than
Didn't you
do
used
this
to
here.
train to drum and bass for like a year?
No, that was techno.
techno.
That's techno.
Oh, there's a difference?
Yeah, you think all electronic music's the same. It's just mostly the same.
How dare you?
So anyway, I had an idea, all right? Because, this is a podcast about discussion. And, when you look on YouTube about, or you look at the different YouTubers or podcasters that talk about Bruce Lee, there's really not a lot of,
man.
there's not a lot of Bruce Lee podcasts. There's a lot of YouTubers that talk about it, and they make clickbait. Some of these guys are absolutely full of shit. The Beardies, the Bruce Lee real fight channels, and some of them are, they try to give good information like Goldenbell Training, right?
Oh yeah.
But Goldenbell Training,
some shit.
Even though he knows some shit,
Yeah.
he's still a bit of a master of the clickbait. He's a master of the
masturbator.
clickbait thumbnail and title.
Yes. You're kind of good at the,
sometimes
the
I'll have a
baiting.
good. Sometimes I'll have a good like clickbaity thumbnail, and other times I make those thumbnails in about 5 minutes. When I upload the episode, I go, oh, damn, I got to make a thumbnail. No, I listen to your intro. What did we talk about? And then I just guess. Because sometimes what you say in the intro to the episode isn't even like the main thing we really discussed. So some of the thumbnails are totally off.
Yes.
Because it's like, I just listen to the intro. I'm like, oh, okay, we talked about Bruce Lee's socks in this episode. So, a photo of Bruce Lee and a photo of socks and me going, like this.
Not Ernie socks.
Not Ernie socks,
No.
all right? So anyway, I thought, I don't watch that much YouTube, as I've discussed many times. Like, although I follow Goldenbell on Instagram, he's a cool dude, and he's been supportive in the past.
You ever met him?
No, he lives in Thailand.
Oh,
but I watch one of his videos.
Shout out to my man,
watch one of his
Goldenbell.
beardy videos, and that's it. And it's not because I don't like his stuff. I just don't have time.
Yeah.
I'm just like between teaching and everything, I just don't have time to watch or consume that much YouTube. But I'm like, now we're starting to. You
should.
We're
make the
starting
time.
to amass a large library of podcasts.
Oh,
getting
yeah.
into soon what will be our third year.
Ooh.
And finishing our third year, I should say. Wow. And so I want to start cutting out some of the choice clips from all this massive library we have. And because we do talk about a lot of really interesting stories,
Some rich stuff,
and just put some clickbaity title and clickbaity thumbnail, and I think that's what's going to help this channel grow, because people don't want to sit and listen to an hour and a half, 20-minute discussion. They want, tell me everything in 6 minutes about how Bruce Lee met Bolo, all right? And you watch those videos and you find out most of them are total bullshit.
Okay.
I'm not talking about the Goldenbells particularly, but sometimes I'll go by and I'll see Bruce Lee and Starlet, and it'll be him in Nora Mao, right? And that'll be on the thumbnail. And then you click on it, it's an AI-generated voice. It's not even a person who narrated it. And it's just a medley of photos of the two of them together. And the fucking video has 3.5 million views. And here I am, busting my ass, reading books and meeting people who knew Bruce Lee so I could have some intelligent discussion about Bruce Lee. And it's dude, that episode killed. We got 2,500 views. You know what I mean, right?
Oh,
and
man.
it's the format. You have to talk some. So Goldenbell has got that down. All right. So what I decided to do is this.
Okay.
We're gonna go to Goldenbell's YouTube channel, his page.
That's what's up. Okay.
And I want you to just read me the titles of his videos. Now, mind you, with the exception of a beardy video a bit back, I've not actually watched any of Goldenbell's videos, right? I'm going to, without doing any research or prep, discuss whether I think the thing is total full clickbait, it's a fabricated story.
All right.
Or if I do know something about it, and then what I want is our audience, right, both YouTube and on Patreon, to vote as to which ones I should make a legit video about. Because I'm going to make a couple direct topic videos, shorter ones, but I want it to be the stuff that people want to know.
All right.
So I'm going to discuss all the clickbaity videos that he's got. And if we run out, we can go to Bruce Lee Real Fight.
Okay.
And I'll say what I know without doing any research, right? And then our audience can decide.
So I get to pick the clickbaity
well, you should just go through all of them.
Oh, shit.
And
one by one?
Yeah, I'll say if I know anything.
1 by 1, 2 by 2, 3 by 3.
Or I'll say pass. All right? Okay, so here we start. All right?
Okay.
There you go. So let's start from the top. We're in Goldenbell's page right now. We'll do it like a lightning round, and then we can have a vote.
This is rich. I love this.
All right, let's go. Let's go.
This first one you're going to love.
Of course.
So many people are confused about basics in Wing Chun Chi Sao. Some view it as a collection of moves, and masters confuse their own students by talking of principles and concepts without telling them what's what. The 15 Chi Sao Fundamentals is my attempt at explaining Wing Chun Chi Sao from a perspective of principles, but also with the basic techniques required to express those principles. It shows the framework for Hong Kong Wing Chun Chi Sao, in particular, the training of Pun Sao and Lap Da. This is necessary training before going on to the higher and more spontaneous expressions of Chi Sao. Right now, if you use the code KFG Chi Sao, you can get a signed copy of my book for the price of the unsigned one. Click on the link in the description below and use the code KFG Chi Sao at checkout to get a signed copy of this full-color, over 230-page manual on the vital foundational training exercise of Wing Chun. This offer is good while supplies last, so get yours today.
All right. So the first one is Shannon Lee brings Bruce Lee back to life with new biopic.
Oh, okay. So I assume they're talking about that new Ang Lee film. Bruce Lee does not need to be brought back to life because
Shannon Lee looks kind of
do you hear
in his photo?
But do you hear? Yeah, there's old photos of her around. Do you?
Nah, it doesn't look old at all.
Photoshopped photos, I should say. But do you hear that? How the title sounds so great? Like he's really good. Like that is a
he's
good.
a
That's the kind of
master.
video where people are like, oh yeah, I got to go see that, especially casuals. All
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Because anyone who is actually into the Bruce Lee world, the moment they see Shannon Lee, they're like, ignore. Like she doesn't know anything about her father, and she sells Bruce tea and Bruce Lee flip flops and Be Water Tabi socks and stuff under her dad's name, right?
And I have a pair of Bruce Lee flip flops. That's not cool.
Doesn't surprise me.
I had a cup of Bruce tea for breakfast.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, there has to be some kind of Bruce Lee cereal too.
I cooked some curry last night in some Bruce ghee.
Okay.
Yo, I'm done.
So anyway,
I'm done.
I assume. I mean, look, it's a great title, but I assume they're talking about the new Ang Lee movie, which I have absolutely no
Is the
confidence.
biopic?
Then yeah, that biopic, and
Gotta love them biopics,
if
man.
Shannon signs off on it, then you should run screaming. Whenever someone decides to do a project about Bruce Lee, and you hear that the estate wants to sue them, that's the project you want to watch.
Oh.
Okay.
Word.
If the estate,
That's how
If the estate does
you know.
something, all right, that's one you can forget. All right. All right. What's the next one?
The next one is what really happens when Bruce Lee fought a Goju Ryu master.
Goju Ryu.
Yeah, same difference.
Same
Potato,
difference.
potato.
So do you know Goju loosely translated? Simply translated means hard and soft or rigid and flexible.
Ooh.
Goju. And that ju, the flexible part, that's the same ju as in judo and jujitsu.
Got
So
it.
Goju. Ju meaning like flexible or soft or something like that, right? In Chinese at least.
How's it sound? Phonetic?
So go. Well, I don't speak Japanese, so I can't say the correct pronunciation. But those two characters in Japanese,
Got it.
it's gong and yao in Cantonese. Gong yao, which gong is like stiff or rigid. Yao is flexible, like yao, like flexible power, right? And same thing like judo. It's the same judo and jujitsu. That's why it confuses people because jujitsu is often spelled Jiu, and judo is just Ju, but it's actually the same character. So
Interesting.
the Jew of Jiu-Jitsu and the Jew of Judo is actually the same one. So technically there should be no difference in spelling. The Valenti brothers, who are students of the late Helio Gracie, they spell it Ju, Jitsu, just to kind of keep in line with that there.
Gotcha.
Right? Yeah, I don't know anything about Bruce Lee fighting a Goju Ryu practitioner. I mean, of course, these things often get a little blown out of proportion. Bruce Lee visited a tournament, and there was a Goju Ryu practitioner, and Bruce Lee
beat
did
that
his
ass.
and Bruce Lee did his speed test
Yeah.
or something like that, right? And then flash forward 50 years later, and it was a
I
fight,
stopped Bruce Lee.
or it was a challenge or something like that, right? So I would have to watch that video to see if the story has any teeth. But I mean, Bruce Lee fighting a Goju Ryu practitioner or whatever. This is not like something that offhandedly all the fans of Bruce Lee would know. I mean, I just read
I know.
John
I was going
Little's
to
book.
ask you about that. Is it in his book?
Well, it could be. I mean, I actually read the book very early on because I was one of the first proofers of the book. So I would have to revisit it, but nothing like sticks out in mind like, oh yeah, the famous Goju fight, right? All right, what's the next one?
Next one you got. Mason Lee trained 5 years to play Bruce Lee in new movie.
Yes, that is the son of Ang Lee who's going to be playing Bruce Lee. First of all, he doesn't look anything like Bruce Lee, which means he's
He
going
looks
to
more
have
like Mikey Lee, D.
Yes, which means he's going to have to do, he's not going to like try to do a Bruce Lee imitation. He's going to try to invoke the spirit of Bruce Lee on the screen. And I'm sure it's going to be amazing. And I'm sure his 5 years of training put him on par with the actual Bruce Lee.
Okay.
I'm sure you'll be able to, after his 5 years of training with some Hollywood kung fu trainer, I'm sure that Mason Lee looks exactly like Bruce
Is
Lee.
he related to the Lee family?
He's related to his father, Ang Lee.
Ang Lee.
Who's the
but
director
not-
of the film.
But not related to Bruce Lee. Ain't that something?
Well,
Have you been drinking?
yeah.
I'm drinking this caffeine.
I
What you
know
talking about?
that you are festive this morning.
Festive. I
Yes.
love that word.
So
I love British-
just so you know, Mikey, I got because right now he lives very close to me, right?
Stop.
And so he sent me a text at like 3:30 in the morning. He's like, oh, let me know if you're driving into the school today. I want to come in with you, right? And then I'm like, but he arrived at 3:30, and we had to get here kind of early today. So then I called him, and he was like,
I didn't fall asleep until 5:30.
But it's funny that you mention that, Mikey, because I was thinking about that on the way into the school today. All right, so I picked up Dre, and I'm like, this dude worked late last night and got in super, super late, sleeps for like a couple hours, and then I come and pick him up, and he's in my car. And he's like, yo, Steve, you got to listen to this, like, large professor. And he's going in there, and he has all the energy of like a toddler boy.
no, man.
Yeah.
And he's like
That's not
on
what
it,
happened.
like,
That's
and
not what
he's like
happened.
funny and making jokes and stuff. And I'd be
not
like,
what
I would
happened.
be so useless
That's not what
if I was in his situation, right? And we're stuck in traffic here because of this stupid thing shut down. He's not even mildly annoyed. He's like, oh, yeah, yo, yeah. And he's like telling me about all this stuff. And I'm sitting there, the car's not moving. And I'm like, we got to record a podcast. And he's like, yo, man, dude, and this is Nas the first time. This is the first time you ever hear Nas. Wow. And he's got all that energy and enthusiasm. And he's got like an hour of sleep.
I think it was the large professor that did it last night. You know what I'm saying?
All right. So what's the next video? So
Next,
so Mason Lee, I think after 5 years of training, will look exactly like Bruce Lee. It'd be impossible to tell the difference between.
He
the
looked
two.
less like Sarah Lee, more like Bruce.
Yeah. I'm going to say, Dre, can you also keep the iPad down on your knees? Because every time you put it onto that, I get a pop in the microphones.
Oh, fuckery.
Okay, go ahead.
Jesus, he's losing it.
He's losing it. Before we recorded today, he was having weird conversations with himself. All right, okay. You know what it is? It's not that he's like that way. It's like he's so tired he's in that delusional phase where he's seeing shit.
Delirium.
Delirium, yes.
Yeah,
That makes sense.
I think that's what is going on.
Yeah, I think so too. Thanks for that update.
Less
Great.
sleep.
All right,
That's what it's
next
about
video.
from now on.
Next video.
All right, are we ready? What really happened? Let me get the thing over here. What really happened when a store clerk annoyed Bruce Lee?
This is starting to sound I like my boy Goldenbell's all cool and stuff, but
Yeah.
this sounds a little bit like a Beardy video
It
title.
might be.
Right?
It might have.
Now, mind you, I haven't seen this video. So, you know, the thing with clickbait, it's got a title like that. This is the one time, like, this store clerk annoyed Bruce Lee. And then you watch the video, and then, like, and Bruce Lee said, keep it up, son, and gave him a tip and walked out. You know what I mean? Like and then you watch the
Super
video, and
chill.
it's like,
Right.
like it's a big nothing burger, right? So, again, as someone who's been around the block with, like, Bruce Lee stuff or whatever, nothing pops to mind. I mean, I would have to like look to see if there was a story there. But one thing that annoys me, and I don't know if it's the case here, because again, I haven't seen the video, so it's a little unfair to critique it. But Beardy has this problem, is that there's always like, this guy got in Bruce Lee's face, and then this happens. It's always like a video like that, right? And with Beardy, he paints Bruce Lee as this like hothead, and not that Bruce Lee wasn't a hothead in certain instances, who was like literally getting in fist fights the moment he walks out his door. For like the mailman looks at him funny, and he's punching the mailman, right? Yeah. And it's like, if you spent any time talking to people who knew Bruce Lee, like if Steve Golden or Dan Inosanto or James DeMille, any of these guys, you get an impression about what he's like, but he's not walking around punching people in the face for imaginary slights. This store clerk, was rude to him. So what, does he round kick him and knock him out in the store, right? If the story is not a big nothing burger, like where it's like, some anecdote about someone annoying Bruce Lee and then it ended up being nothing, right? And he's just trying to pump it up in the title. If it's not a big nothing burger story, I would say it's probably just made up.
I love store clerks.
Yeah. Store clerks.
Yeah.
Stork?
Store
Lurks?
clerks.
All right.
Stork lurks.
Next one.
Next up, we got Bruce Lee never is in capitals, by the way.
Of course.
Bruce Lee never wanted anyone to see this real fight.
Okay.
So
off the top of my head,
there's footage.
No. Well, the first thing that comes up to the top of my head is the movie Dragon, the Bruce Lee story. Oh. Where the brother of Johnny Sins, or Johnny, what is the name of the guy that he beats up? Johnny's son, all right? Johnny Mo, played by John Chang, right? Yeah. He beats him up after, of course, first, he gets his back broken walking away, right? In the sacred underground catacombs of San Francisco Chinatown.
Poor guy.
Then he beats him at the Ed Parker tournament, and then his brother comes to challenge him on the set of Big Boss, and then after Bruce Lee, beats the shit out of this guy, then they filmed the whole thing, and then he takes the reel out. Right, so that's a fabricated story from Dragon, the Bruce Lee story, right? But that's the first thing that comes to mind when I hear this. Now, what I do know is that there have actually been a couple instances where Bruce Lee had a scrap with someone. Especially in the times when Bruce Lee started to become a little more famous, let's say in the time in Hong Kong, where he didn't want the other actor to lose face, having lost or performed poorly in an exchange with Bruce Lee. Okay. So such was supposedly the case with the Lau Tai Chun fight, that after Bruce had beaten Lau Tai Chun, he told the people who were there not to really talk about it, not to make a big deal, supposedly maybe even threw a couple bucks Lau Tai Chun's way for some medical expenses or ointments or salves or whatever.
Is this the fight with that happened and your buddy witnessed that he was telling you about it with his wife?
Yes,
and then his wife was like,
I told the story actually in Hong Kong on the trip. And I told the story in front of that guy's house. Where he had told me the story, right?
Great.
I told this very early on in the podcast, so for people who are longtime fans, I apologize if I'm repeating myself, but for the longest time, this story about Bruce Lee and Lau Tai Chun was like a big rabbit hole that I had gone down, right? Lau Tai Chun being a very low level, you could not even call him a B-list actor. You had to call him like a C-list actor. He was trying to make a name for himself by challenging Bruce Lee in the press. Around the time, just shortly after Big Boss, Fist of Fury, around that time. And he was supposedly a boxing champion, had some wrestling or whatever. It wasn't like a traditional kung fu guy, but was starting to make some movies. If you look at Lau Tai Chun's IMDb, it's like, I think he's got 3 credits, and I don't think any one of those credits, the character has a name. It's like Thug number 2, It's like the Big Boss's step nephew. You know what I mean?
I would kill to be Thug number 2.
Yeah,
I would kill for that.
So that his career didn't really take off when he doesn't have a single credit where his character had a name.
Oh man!
All right, and so he was clearly trying to, it was one of those things that he had everything to gain and Bruce Lee had everything to lose. If Bruce Lee beats the shit out of this guy, so what? You beat up a nobody, right? And if Bruce loses to this guy, then it's like he lost to a nobody, right? And I think Bruce recognized this. He was a little bothered by the challenge, not because I think he felt any particular danger from Lao Tai Chun, but just because he could very clearly see that Lao Tai Chun was... do not open your OnlyFans shit while you're on the job here.
Sorry.
All right?
Sometimes it just pops up.
It just pops up.
Yeah. I think that's the name of the
It's
OnlyFans
scheduled.
page that
Yeah.
he's on, right?
Pops up.
Sometimes it just pops up. So anyway, you know,
Love OnlyFans.
Bruce, I think, knew that Lao Tai Chun was just trying to make a name for himself, and I think it bothered him a little bit. But then the story was, did they actually fight or not? There's, you know, the story that they were in a restaurant, and Lam Cheng Ying, famous from Prodigal Son, who was in Bruce Lee's entourage, was there and saw Lao Tai Chun.
Yeah, he
at
was
that time
tight.
was really tight. You know, it's like, yeah, you're not effing qualified to challenge my Sifu. Right?
Yeah,
If
that's
you want to
some
fight, I'll take you on, right?
That's
that kind
some shit
of thing,
I'll
right?
do.
Yes.
Yeah. Don't let anybody challenge you.
Yeah, it's always it's like
Yeah.
Lam Cheng Ying was
Don't-
like, dude,
don't-
you're not even
no.
qualified to touch my
no.
Sifu, right? Because he referred to Bruce Lee, although he was not learning Jeet Kune Do, but Lam Cheng Ying referred to Bruce Lee as Sifu. That's how much he respected, not even older brother, which would have been understood. He literally called him Sifu, right? And so then supposedly a fight happened. And there are a couple conflicting accounts of what happened between Bruce Lee and Lao Tai Chun. But all of them indicate if something had happened. It was a very brief thing. So there's one story is that they were at some kind of party. You know, imagine, you know, at that time Bruce Lee's a movie star. There are industry parties at those Chinese banquet places.
He didn't go to too many parties, right?
No, he went to some of
He
those
doesn't seem like the type.
No, there are a lot of photos of Bruce like showing up at these things, but he probably would just show up and then he wouldn't
Yeah.
be there for too long.
Bounce.
You know,
and out.
it's networking, you know, and so he was there. So supposedly there was some industry party or something like that. There were a bunch of movie people there, and Lao Tai Chun was there, and then some words were had, and they went out into the hall, and there was a quick exchange, right? So that's kind of story A. I think that story is quite plausible because of the I have two audio recordings from two people whom I can't really say who they are. I could say one, I suppose. It's Lam Cheng Ying himself.
Oh.
An audio recording of Lam Cheng Ying in Cantonese, saying that the fight had happened in the way I just described.
In like a hallway.
In like a hallway
Okay.
or outside a banquet hall at a Chinese restaurant, right? Not sure where. It was Kowloon or New Territories or whatever.
Okay.
So there's that story. I have a tendency to think Lam Cheng Ying, who always kept a very low profile, wouldn't really have any reason to fabricate that story. However, the other really plausible story, or the other story I should say, which I also have evidence, 'cause studying history is not about, especially when you have such scanty evidence.
Yeah.
You can't say, okay, this is what happened. You can't do the dishonest thing that Sergio does with Wing Chun history and say, because some Chinese people told me this, and it falls in line with what I like. Therefore, this is the history. And that's confirmation bias. That's all sorts of fallacies in terms of historical
It's
method,
history
right?
because I like it.
Yes, it also happens to support and prop up the specific lineage that you teach as being the most authentic. Then you have a tendency to have to kind of wonder, because it's one thing if you say, here's an old, just to diverge a little bit to the kind of dishonesty of Sergio's historical methods. It's one thing if you say, here's a rare style of Wing Chun that I have this and this evidence to suggest it is like it predates the Yip Man style or predates the Leung Jan style, and these are the characteristics. But there always seems to be this kind of tacit understanding that it's also therefore more authentic because it's older or it wasn't mixed with something like this. And then comes the real, you know, the real zinger. Oh, it's also the style that we teach. You see what I mean? No one has ever said, here's a very ancient style of Wing Chun, very authentic. I've learned it. It predates Yip Man and Leung Jan and all that. It totally sucks, by the way, but I learned it. It's always like, no, this is more traditional. And then the idea that something being more traditional somehow bestows it with things that, you know, make it better for fighting, right? If you only get better at fighting if you practice and you spar and you integrate the types of attacks and movements that the other people are using, right? No one is attacking you in Chisao. No one is attacking you in Wing Chun. If you're not teaching your students how to fight against these other types of attacks, then you're not really preparing them. And in the Qing dynasty, I don't care how good someone's Fat Geng was and how good someone's connection with the ground was, they never dealt with someone who was an expert in Western boxing who could do a quick double jab, fake, go down, put you into a double leg takedown, and then turn you into a pretzel on the floor. They never faced someone with that skill set. So this idea that because something is older or more authentic, maybe there's some ideas in there that went missing. But that doesn't necessarily mean that that style as is more prepared to fight against a modern fighter than anything else. And that's the other fallacy that gets smuggled in with this word authentic, right?
Okay.
And so to come back to the point here, when you're talking about history, especially something like Chinese Kung Fu history, which is a flaming dumpster fire of stories and hearsay, and I believe it because I like it. I believe it because I like that Sifu. I have a good rapport with him, and I believe because they speak well that they must know something about history that I don't, and therefore I follow what they say. This is not how any real history is written. All right, you cannot begin with the conclusion in mind. All right, I'm going to search out why my style is the most authentic. You're already beginning with the conclusion in mind. You're only going to look for facts that are going to support your hypothesis, and you're going to ignore the ones that go against it. Damn. And that's not how history is done. History is done in probabilities. Okay, you have to match all the information we know versus what we don't know, versus the probabilities that these kind of things happened, you know? And you can only say, with a certain degree of certainty, which is usually very low, this is the probability of this story happening. When it comes to the Lao Tai Chun fighting Bruce Lee at a outside of a banquet hall, I would give
it's
that
probable.
Yeah, but maybe 25%.
Okay.
Okay, we're not talking like 70%, just because because we still don't know. All right. And then the second story, which is about maybe perhaps a little less, maybe 20, maybe 15%, is that they fought at Tang Sang's home, the home of the famous Wing Chun police detective. In the backyard, there was supposedly a boxing ring back there where there was a time period after they had lost, the Wing Chun fighters had lost very poorly in Singapore. There was full contact fighting was not allowed in Hong Kong until the 70s. In the 1960s, they didn't allow it because there were still some feelings that Chinese martial arts, when assembled, had something to do with organized crime and triads and stuff like that. Yeah. So it wasn't really until the late 60s, early 70s that these attitudes in Hong Kong these attitudes against Chinese martial arts started to change. And then by the 1970s, you started to have fighting contests, eventually full contact in Hong Kong. But before you didn't have that. The first full contact kind of for Chinese martial arts that I know of, that the Wing Chun people participated in en masse was this one in Singapore in the late 60s. Of course, I'm not talking about Wong Sun Leung going to Taiwan in the 50s. That's something else. I'm talking about this is the first kind of big thing in Asia, was this big Singaporean tournament. And they had really weird rules, and they basically fought using, and I'm not making excuses for the Wing Chun people, it's just that they fought basically, you ever see those kendo helmets? Yeah. Like for the sword practice with the shinais, with the bamboo shinais. They fought in those. So they had those kind of like slotted helmets with the big shoulder pads and these huge these like bamboo chest protectors and these big gloves. And so the problem was the Wing Chun fighters didn't train in that equipment. And then so when they went to Singapore, they had to gear up with twice the amount of equipment of an American football player. Right. And they just were not able to do it. You know, what people don't, especially in our art, because we generally don't train people for full contact fighting. But one of the things you have to do if you're training for a certain type of fighting tournament, let's say you're doing let's say you're a Wing Chun fighter that also wants to dabble in kickboxing, all right? Well, then you need to spar in the equipment that you're going to fight in. Because if you don't, you're not going to be used to, like, what is it like to do Wing Chun footwork with shin and instep guards on, or knee pads or elbow pads, and these gloves and a helmet, right, with a mouthpiece, which is going to restrict your breathing, right? So a big part of your training should also be training in the equipment that you're going to fight in, as well as your sparring in the equipment that you're going to be fighting in, right? And these Wing Chun guys went there and had suddenly had to suit up like they were doing kendo, and then they got trounced. And Yip Man was not very happy. So he did a couple things to kind of deal with this problem. One, he decided to lower the tuition fees at the Wing Chun Athletic Association in the late 60s so as to bring in more youngsters. Because the idea is like, okay, well, if we're going to, develop Wing Chun for fighting in the ring, you need young guys. And the fees apparently were a little, more geared towards adults who could afford this art. So they lowered the fees to see if they could get more young guys to come in and start learning Wing Chun at the Wing Chun Athletic Association. And that was actually when my late Sibak, Elman Leung, joined. Because Elman Leung was like a teenager then.
Okay.
And he basically joined the Wing Chun Athletic Association in this time period where the fees were lowered because Yip Man wanted to get more young blood there.
Yeah.
All right. And as a result, when Elman joined the Wing Chun Athletic Association, Yip Man was his sifu because Yip Man was kind of, I think for a few months, he was kind of in charge, wanting to train people himself after this kind of embarrassing loss. And that's when Elman Leung started learning. So he could always claim Yip Man was his actual sifu, right? Then Elman Leung took a short break for his studies, like a semester. And when he came back, Yip Man had brought Leung Ting over and basically said, hey guys, this is the guy who's going to be teaching here for me at the Wing Chun Athletic Association now, and introduce everyone to Leung Ting. And then Yip Man just kind of peaced out and rode off into the sunset. And then Elman Leung followed Leung Ting since then. And, nice. Elman Leung respected Leung Ting so much that he called him sifu, right? But so that was the first thing Yip Man did to kind of rectify this humiliating loss. Like, let's get some young blood in. Yeah. Let's start training some, new generation, because the old generation, they're too old to fight. And then the other thing is Tang Sang, with all of his wealth. He had a home in Fanleng being the area where Yip Man's grave is. He supposedly built a boxing ring in his backyard. And the boxing ring was so that the Wing Chun fighters could come up to Fanling, which was basically the countryside. So they could get out of the city, out of Kowloon, out of Hong Kong Island side, go to the countryside of Hong Kong, especially in the Fanling is crowded and packed now, but in the 70s, I mean, for Hong Kong standards, Fanling is not crowded and packed, but compared to the 70s, Fanling is now what Kowloon was like, you know what I mean? But back then it was like Tang Sang had his home there because that was out in the countryside. No one would bother him, right? So he set up this boxing ring so the Wing Chun fighters could go there and train and get used to fighting in the ring and get used to fighting with the equipment on. So the second story about Bruce Lee and Lau Tai Chun is that Tang Sang brought Lau Tai Chun and Bruce Lee over to his place, and they had a fight in that boxing ring. That story has been told by a few different people.
Okay.
People who are, because one of the things you have to look at when you're trying to not confirm something, it's very difficult to confirm anything, but when you want to start to get probabilities in terms of stories, is you have to look at independent sources for the same story. Because sometimes people are like, yeah, dude, these 5 different guys told me the same story. And when you look, you realize those 5 different guys got the story from the same person. So you're not listening to 5 different accounts, like 5 independent accounts. You're listening to 5 accounts that came from the same original account. So they're not unique. So what you really want to do when you're looking at things from a historical perspective is find out how many unique attestations to an event can you get from different people who maybe didn't cross over.
Yeah.
All right, because then that gives you an idea, because it's not like, this guy told that guy, told that guy, told that guy, and they're all telling you the same story.
These 3 guys don't know each other at all. But
yeah, or maybe
there.
Maybe they know each other, but the story is not coming from the same place. Okay. So that's what I tried to do with the Tang Sang story. I have the Tang Sang story with the boxing ring. I have from 3 different places. And so, one person who was reporting on something that was, I believe, reported to Bolo. I don't know who that person is. The other person was supposedly there. witnessed the fight. And then the other one is the president of the Hong Kong Chinese Martial Arts Association, who heard the story from someone else who was there. All right, so that's the best I could get. But it's pretty strong that there was potentially a fight there in Fanling. Now, of course, at Tang Sang's place. Of course, when you really look into these stories in detail, what you find is that these are old stories. Details are very fuzzy. And people who were there at the time maybe didn't even realize, like, hey, this is going to be a big deal in 50 years. I remember one time I talked to Wan Kam Leung, Seagal Wan Kam Leung, very early on. I think it was maybe even the first time I met him. I asked him some questions about Tang Sang. And he was like, oh, yeah, I've been to Tang Sang's home. And I was like, oh, really? Because I've been trying to find Tang Sang's home forever because I want to see if the boxing ring is still in the backyard. Doubt it. It's like 50 years later. But I want to find them because he had a very nice house there, but I can't get an address for it. I've been looking at records, all sorts of stuff. And then one time I'm like, oh, do you remember where his house was? Oh, no, I don't remember. You know what I mean? So the problem is like, and then so what you realize is the story was so long ago that sometimes people blend aspects of the story.
Yeah, blur the lines.
So, for example, the party for the film people could have been in Fanling. And the fight was in Fanling, but not at Tang Sang's home. And Tang Sang might have been at that party, which could have been in the New Territories, but the fight wasn't at his house, but that's how Tang Sang's name gets kicked in.
Okay.
Right? So the problem is it's very easy for a combination of both stories to be true because they're both fuzzy enough where they could just be very bad versions of the same story being told.
Right.
You understand? So that's what we mean by probabilities, right? So when we're talking about these things, you have to deal in probabilities. Liu Chi-kang was the one who told me that story about, that I said, was it true that Bruce and Lau Tai Chun had a fight at Tang Sang's home and he had a stroke at that time. This was in 2014. So he couldn't really communicate very well, just like in simple things. His wife was there kind of translating for him. Yeah. And he said, yes. I said, oh, the fight did happen? He said, yes. I said, how do you know? And he was like, because I was there. And then that's, and then he said, and then he was talking about it. And then his wife turns to him and says, you told me you were going to play mahjong on that day, not go watch a fight. And mind you, that there was like a massive, it was like a 50-year-old story then. Okay? Or a 40-something-year-old story then.
He's getting his ass handed to him.
And never underestimate the power of a Chinese wife to remember some shit you did 50 frickin' years ago and pull that thing up, right? And it was just the look on his face was like, didn't matter. There was no statute of limitations on that shit. You're still in trouble, sir. Yeah. Doesn't matter you had a stroke. That was 40 years ago. The moment we leave, she's going to yell at you. Yeah. You said you were going to go play mahjong and you went to go watch Bruce Lee fight. Yeah. How dare you, right? How dare you? So that is how we kind of deal in these kind of probabilities with these stories here.
Yeah.
So anyway, what's the next
got
clickbait?
Time for one more? Let's see.
Got time for plenty more. There's only
got 40, time for plenty more?
We're only 40 minutes in this podcast, buddy.
Okay. I thought we were almost done, yo.
Yeah, wishful thinking. You are really...
He's working in time dilation.
What? I'm trying to read.
I bought that coffee, but did you sneak something that were you behind the curtain?
Of course not.
Yeah.
Why would I?
He's taking that limitless pill. All right. Okay, let's go.
NZT, baby. Ever wonder why Bolo Yeung punched Bruce Lee?
No, I don't, because no one ever talks about that. Well, did he ask him to punch him? See, again, these are always these things. It's like these are like ultra anecdotal stories.
Yeah.
Maybe Bolo told a story like, Bruce asked him to punch him in his abs or something like that, right?
Okay.
But see, it's one of those things like, hey, check out my abs. And then, he goes and he punches him. And then it becomes a title like this, right? Of course, I don't know. I'll have to watch the video. And I'll have to see if it was anything more than that.
Okay.
Michael
so you
Chan.
never wondered. All right.
I never wondered because it's not something anybody talks about.
All right.
But I love it. Like planting the seed in the audience and ever wonder? No, actually, I didn't ever wonder that. Why? Because I didn't know that until I read this title. That's the beauty. That shows you he's a clickbait master.
He's so good.
All right. Tells you something you've never heard before. And makes it seem like you should have heard it. Maybe you didn't.
Yeah.
Or maybe you just didn't know, but you did hear it.
You gotta love these masters of debating.
Yes, absolutely. Man. So I do know there's a story, Michael Chan, who you know is Chan Wai Man, said that he witnessed an arm wrestling contest between Bruce Lee and Bolo, and that Bruce Lee beat Bolo in an arm wrestling contest.
That's so
which is
wild.
crazy.
Yeah.
Not unbelievable, given a couple things. There's a difference between, that kind of wiry tensile strength that Bruce Lee had, that very sinewy tendon kind of strength, versus like the raw muscle of Bolo, although Bolo had weight on Bruce. But the other thing is, when you see Bolo in Enter the Dragon,
right,
one thing that's painfully obvious is he's out of season in terms of being a bodybuilder.
Yeah.
Because when you look at his bodybuilding photos, most of which you can really only see his son post them, David Yeung, Bolo Jr. on Instagram. His son will occasionally post like the competition photos of his father bodybuilding from that time. And when Bolo was in season, he's just shredded, just muscle on top of muscle, right? Yeah. But when you see him in Enter the Dragon, he's a little doughy. Yeah. So he's in my opinion not like he's probably not at his strongest anyway. So right. a very sinewy, wiry, strong, high power to body weight proportions, coked out Bruce Lee could definitely probably beat Bolo in an arm wrestling contest. No problem. All right? Or ask him to punch him in his abs, right? Oh, yeah. All right, what else we got?
Next up, we got sketchy things about Steven Seagal that we all ignored.
That is so funny.
Okay, at what point did anyone ignore any sketchy things with Steven Seagal?
Yeah, exactly. I think Steven Seagal is the epitome of getting called out on every sketchy thing he's ever done. Okay. Because he's at the point now where he doesn't care, because he's like almost in that Trump phase where it's like he murdered a baby in front of people on TV. They're like, yeah. I'll still vote that guy in.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's like, what at this point could Steven Seagal do? And anyone who's a hardcore fan of his would care about. And the other people kind of love to hate him. Like, there's so many YouTube channels right now that like review all of those really shocky straight to video movies that he made, kind of posts. Post his career kind of going offline a little bit.
Yeah, once he was done in Hollywood in like the early to mid 2000s, and that was it. It's been all straight to video.
Yeah, man, with his weird sewed-in hairline. Yeah, I mean, like it's like a rug.
Is it sewed in?
Lasered by Zeus himself. Yeah, it's amazing.
I thought it was real.
You thought that was real?
Yeah.
Did you ever notice that even in like Above the Law, his hair was thinning? He had the ponytail and the front of his hair was thinning.
I thought that was fake.
And
CGI.
now he has like he's got like the Dracula widow's peak.
I thought that was CGI thinning. But no,
CGI thinning in the late 80s?
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, can you imagine?
Yeah, I love that.
Even Lucas didn't have that technology. Can you imagine a low-budget movie like Above the Law, and they're like in the 80s, and someone's like, or we're going to use the most advanced computer technology to make it look like his hair is thinning. All right?
It's for the character.
Yeah, it's for the kids. Yeah, so, no, I don't know. Was there anything sketchy about... Well, I think there was sketchy stuff about Seagal, which didn't come out until a little bit later because of the internet.
That 2005 album, for one.
Yeah, well, the Mi Wanda Punani.
Mi Wanda
right?
Punani.
Yeah. Have you heard that song? Steven Seagal has a song.
Steven Seagal has a song?
Called Mi Wanda Punani.
I need to hear this
Yes, you do.
now.
Yes, you do.
We're going to play it after this.
We'll play it for you after this, all right? Yeah. Not on the podcast, because then we'll get demonetized. Mi Wanda Punani.
Yeah.
All right? Yes. I shit thee not, Dre. It is amazing.
And Lady Saw is on it with him. It's like that whole album. He's got like Stevie Wonder's on another song doing the harmonica. Like he's got some stars on that album.
Yeah.
Seagal killing it for a bit. You know what I mean?
I might have told the story. I might have told the story on the podcast, and I digress. I once heard a pretty badass Stevie Wonder story.
Oh, please do.
From someone who knows Stevie Wonder personally. I'm not going to say who it is. In the 80s. I told you this story. I told you this story. Stevie Wonder, his son, was very young at that time in the 80s, and his son was being obnoxious. I know you know him too, by the way. But this story, but just so audience has full disclosure, this Stevie Wonder story I don't have from Dre or any of Dre's books.
I didn't tell
It's just
the
that I
story.
know that Dre had met Stevie Wonder's son at some point, right?
Yeah.
But the story was from this guy who knows Stevie Wonder very well, that Stevie Wonder was at home, his son was acting a fool, as they say, right? Just being obnoxious, just jumping off the walls, and Stevie Wonder wanted some peace and quiet. And then Stevie Wonder said, and I'm not going to do a Stevie Wonder impression here, whatever his son's name, if you don't calm down, I'm going to shoot you like Marvin Gaye's dad shot Marvin Gaye.
God.
And when I heard that Stevie Wonder made that joke, it just made me love Stevie Wonder so much more. That is the funniest thing, all right? That is the funniest thing in the world, right?
Yeah.
Especially at that time, because that was in the 80s when that was like still kind of new,
it was
right?
still fresh.
Yeah, it was like that. There was no too
Yeah.
soon after that.
Yeah, I remember being in school hearing about that.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
just like,
So anyway, I think I don't think any legit people really ignored stuff about Steven Seagal. It was just that during the heyday of his career, it was pre-internet. So like the stuff with him, beating Kelly LeBrock would probably make it into some of the gossip rags, but it wouldn't be plastered all over like something called the internet. So I think it took a few years before people were like, oh, he's been shady for a while, right?
But I knew about the Kelly LeBrock thing because she ended up marrying Roger Moore's son for a bit. I don't know if they're still married. But like that was like a thing at the time, you know what I mean?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
But it wasn't like any career-ending shit for him.
No, but it's the 80s and 90s. None of that shit was career-ending for anyone.
Right, yeah.
You
And
know
then
what I
Sean
mean?
Connery.
Yeah. Sean Connery. Yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, it's. I think just because the internet is available now, we see all this stuff here. It's weird because, people have their opinions about Aikido and stuff like that, but for all intents and purposes, Steven Seagal is kind of legit as they come in terms of the art of Aikido. I mean, he had a dojo in Tokyo.
he's the reason I trained Aikido.
Yeah, and one thing I have to say, so this is me being very complimentary to Seagal Sensei, is that when he first came out, what was great about Seagal's early films, especially Above the Law, Hard to Kill, Marked for Death, is he was doing something different.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
No one saw any
it
of
wasn't
that.
better. Like, it wasn't like, oh, Van Damme's doing all the high kicks and spins. We've seen that before because even Van Damme did that in his own way.
Right.
What made those guys unique is they did something different. They weren't like Van Damme wasn't like a Bruce Lee copy. And Seagal wasn't like a copy of Chuck Norris or something like that, right? What was cool is like he had the hand techniques. It was hard hitting. There was kind of like a cool flow to him, right?
clotheslines.
Yeah, clotheslines. There was something cool, and I think whether it would have lasted as a trend for a while or not, what I really appreciate is that he did something visually different and cool. And he was someone with the legit chops of that style, whatever your feelings are on Aikido as a practical martial art or whatever, right? But it just seems that as he got, popular, became more Hollywood, and then his career started to deteriorate, and he started to get weird. That then him being a Russian citizen and all this other weird stuff, right?
Yeah.
Not that being a Russian citizen is weird, but also being Putin's boy, and just all the weird stuff with his reality show, and then culminating with me
he was
talking.
like a sheriff, right?
Yes.
Steven Seagal, lawman.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's a sheriff of some obscure town.
It's like in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, or some shit like that.
Right.
Okay.
And all culminating with me talking on the phone with him for 5 minutes while I was on the tour. Sifu Richter. So anyway, what did we really ignore about Seagal? All right, let's go to the next one.
So what if you could transport back in time for a front row seat into the life and legacy of one of the most respected Wing Chun masters in history? Gong Sao Wong, a tribute, direct students on Sifu Wong Leung offers you just that. Through a series of exclusive conversations, 25 direct students share anecdotes, reflections, and personal stories offering in-depth understanding of the man behind the legend. Order your copy today across 12 Amazon marketplaces with free shipping. I absolutely love this book, and I think you'll find it an indispensable part of your collection. I can't recommend it enough. Get yours today. Go to Amazon, type in Gong Sao Wong, and there you go.
This one you probably love right here. Right?
Okay.
Why Yip Man stopped teaching Bruce Lee?
Opium addiction.
Damn.
That's the end of that video.
Damn.
Right. Oh, let me guess. I'm gonna guess it's because Bruce wasn't pure Chinese, and Grandmaster Yip Man had faced so much pressure from all of his students not to teach the mutt Bruce Lee, who is not a full-blood Chinese. So that's why he stopped teaching. Well, this is absolute bullshit.
Oh,
this
man.
is the
Damn.
That's the Cliff Notes version of the story.
Okay.
Well, I mean, first of all, it's difficult to say exactly why people did or didn't do things. Quite honestly, it's probably a combination of multiple factors. And of course, especially with Chinese Kung Fu Sifus, when it comes to reasons why they do stuff, they're usually very close to the vest about why they make certain decisions. And they'll have their real reason, and then they'll have their official reason to everyone else.
Yeah.
So the problem is that you have to be really careful with these things, because having been, in my experience, kind of on the ground floor with different Sifus of different styles when they faced, let's say, a crisis in their association, in their school, with their health, whatever it is, they will make statements, and the statement is for the public, and there's a different story behind. So the problem is that sometimes people really latch on to the public story, especially if they're not close to the subject matter, and then they will say, well, that is it. And other people will know the real story and say, that is it. And you know, Bruce was not full-blood Chinese. His mom was Eurasian. Grace was half, I believe now, you know, it used to be thought that she was like half German. But now, according to Matt Pauly's book, she's like half Dutch, perhaps half with some Jewish blood in there as well.
All right.
So Bruce was a quarter German or a quarter Dutch or 1/8 this, 1/8 that, or whatever. Approximately 1/4 of Bruce was not full-blood Chinese. And so this has often been propped up as the reason why Yip Man stopped teaching him, as if somehow Yip Man did not know this when he started. That's also the weird thing too. It's like, wait a minute, all right?
Hey.
Because
how did he slip through the cracks?
Yip Man knew Bruce's father. They were buddies at the opium dens, right, which was very common at that time. Yip Man would most likely know who Lei Hoi Chun's wife was, because she came from a very prestigious family. See, Lei Hoi Chun, Bruce's father, was a Chinese opera actor. And
quite famous.
Quite famous, but that didn't mean that he was like rich. You know what I mean? Because being like a famous opera actor in China, I suppose, is like having the #1 kung fu podcast out of New York. All right, it's like having a. It's like having a trophy for being able to whisper the loudest, right? It's a dubious achievement at best, right? So I mean, you know, within certain circles, you know, Lei Hoi Chun would be very well known within the sophisticated kind of, you know, bohemian peeps of Hong Kong, right? But like, I don't think he would have been mobbed walking down the street or something like that. And it wasn't like there was a crazy amount of money in that.
Not like Mikey Deane.
But his wife, Grace, was from the Ho Tong family.
Ho Tong.
Yeah, which almost sounds, you say Ho Tong, almost sounds like, it hurts a lot in Chinese, right? Ho is like a lot, and Tong is like, Ho Tong, like you say that when you get a massage, and like the lady like starts cranking on your foot, and you're like, Ho Tong, right? It's like, right? But that family was kind of, you would compare it to the Rockefellers here in New York.
Okay.
So Bruce's mom came from money, and came from not just money, but also came from like class and sophistication. And then she fell in love with Lei Hoi Chun, this kind of, you know, bohemian opera star. And also don't forget that in the 50s and 60s, Chinese opera, interest in Chinese opera, whether Northern or Cantonese, started to wane even in Hong Kong. Even in Hong Kong by the 60s, Chinese opera was starting to be kind of like something of the past. Yeah. And that's why a lot of those opera-trained actors like Jackie Chan and Sammo, they didn't make a career in the opera, even though that's what they were trained in. They transitioned into being stuntmen because they had to pivot, because there weren't really jobs for opera actors at that time. So that's why Bruce's father also started to pivot into like acting and stuff, right? But supposedly, you know, Bruce's father, who also had an opium habit, very much like our late beloved Grandmaster, were friends at the opium den or whatever. And then so it would be really difficult to believe that Grandmaster Yip Man didn't know that Lei Hoi Chun's wife was, Grace was from the Ho Tong family. It would be very. I think it would. I would be surprised if that were the case. Which also leads me to believe, although this is a weaker premise, that Yip Man would have known that she's also not full-blood Chinese. Like, I think that would just be common, because at that time, that was stuff you talked about.
Okay.
All right? Like, so-and-so is not fully Chinese. Like, that was, that was like back in the day, if someone was adopted, it was stigmatized. If someone was not full-blooded Chinese, stigma. If people got divorced, it was stigmatized, right? So I find it very hard to believe that Bruce Lee would have began training Wing Chun. And Yip Man somehow wouldn't know that Bruce's mom was not full-blood Chinese. Yeah. I find it's not impossible. I'm not saying that as an absolute claim. I'm just saying it would be somewhat improbable in my estimation that he didn't know about that. So this idea that Yip Man would then be teaching Bruce Lee for a little bit and then suddenly go, but he is not full-blood Chinese. How dare you try to learn our national arts, you mutt. I will stop teaching you, but go secretly learn from Wong Sung anyway. Yeah. There are problems with this. It's the commonly accepted narrative, and I'm not going to say that an aspect of that didn't exist or that wasn't given as a reason, all right? Because people believe it so much, it's so pervasive. I believe that someone at that time said that's why Bruce wasn't really learning. But what we know from Yip Man's history is that in the late 50s into the early 60s, which is generally regarded as Yip Man's middle period, that is a time period where he started to really suffer a lot of the ill effects of his opium addiction, perhaps somewhat pushed by his lady friend, which no one liked. All right, because when Yip Man came to Hong Kong, he came, from what I can tell, without his wife, Miss Jiang Weng Seng was his wife's name. Jiang Weng Seng. From what I understand, she did not come to Hong Kong. All right, or if she did, it's very difficult because you hear conflicting accounts. She came, she would visit from China, but she stayed back with the kids, even though they were adults at that time. Did she die when he came to Hong Kong or shortly after? It's very difficult, but needless to say, or at least as far as I understand, there are no photos of Yip Man with Jiang Weng Seng in Hong Kong. All right, I don't know the exact, and perhaps Stephen David Peterson might know better than me or whatever. But I from what I understand, she did not come to Hong Kong. Okay. So Yip Man got a girlfriend while he was in Hong Kong, and she was a performer.
This happens.
She was a performer, I suppose. Although back then what she did, I suppose, would just dance and sing. But culturally, if you could compare the two, it would be like Yip Man has a girlfriend who works at Rivi's. Okay?
Oh, no.
Right.
Oh, no.
All right.
I don't know what place you're talking about.
Yeah, I know you get that reference. So anyway,
what's that?
She was considered a woman of kind of lower moral standards, and so the students did not like her because, according to Chen Qi Man,
because she was a stripper.
Well, no, she wasn't a stripper. She was like a dancer and a singer, or like an entertainer, perhaps a woman of ill repute. It's difficult to say because whatever she was stigmatized at that time.
Oh, man.
All right, okay? So it could be like she showed too much ankle on the street, okay? I mean, like, so I'm not going to say one thing or another, right?
All right,
okay?
all right.
She was known as a Shanghai woman, all right? So, which is another nebulous definition for a woman of ill repute with an excellent reputation, right? So anyway, the students didn't like her. And Chen Qi Man told me.
Not cool.
Because Chen Qi Man met her. And I was like, oh, you met, your Sifu's like girlfriend at that time. He's like, like even like all these years later, his face is
scowling.
Like he just and I was like, oh, like what? He was like, he's like, oh, we did not like her. We thought she was like not
taking advantage.
No, they thought she was not sophisticated enough to be with their Sifu. Like she was she was a couple notches below. Like it's definitely you could hear the little bit of a caste system going on. She was a couple notches below that which she thought which they thought their Sifu should be dating. The other thing was he said she actually wasn't particularly kind or nice to Grandmaster Yip Man. So it wasn't like she was someone of ill repute, but she was always like so lovey-dovey to him, and like he was an old man. Of course, he's not gonna, to have some young girl kind of like telling him how great he is. Is probably what he wants here. But she wasn't even that. She wasn't like particularly nice to him. And they said she used a lot of, according to Chanchi Man, she used a lot of filthy words. So I just imagine this somewhat like filth, flarn, filth.
God.
Well, then, Bill, I didn't say filth, flarn, filth. Said have a Coke and shut the up. So there were a lot of reasons why the students of Grandmaster Yip Man did not like her. They just felt that she was kind of trash. Yip Man ended up having a son with her, the Yip Siwa. Although he later became, unfortunately, I think, a bit of a drug addict. He passed away a number of years ago. He was the first of the three sons. He was the youngest of the three sons, the first of them to die. Wow. Yeah, and I believe Yip Man had a sister who died a little earlier on. But anyway, that would be a sister, not his kids. Yeah, but his first son, or his youngest son was the first one to pass away. But he had a very hard life, and he didn't do Wing Chun. Yeah. So anyway. Chanchi Man told me that the students of Yip Man wrote a letter to Yip Man, basically saying like, Sifu, we do not like this woman. Now you have to imagine.
This letter is around somewhere.
No, I don't think so.
No, someone has
Yip Man probably tossed it. Doesn't want anyone to see this, especially he doesn't want his girlfriend to see it. Yeah. Can you imagine she walks over and sees this letter from the students like, yo, Sifu, you got to get rid of this chick, right?
Imagine.
Right? No, that thing probably ended up in some incense burner real quick, right? Yeah. And they basically said like, hey, you got to get rid of her or we're not going to stick around, right? And then I was like, really? You basically gave your Sifu a hard line? First of all, you have to imagine in that time it was still very traditional. Like the idea that you would tell your Sifu anything remotely related to their personal life, that wasn't. It's not like now we have like everyone's like Sifu whatever. It's a very normal thing, right? But back then, like it wouldn't be out of the question that many students didn't know much about their Sifu's personal life, where they were from, or their home life, or even if they had kids or not. Like sometimes this stuff was all a secret, right? So the idea that they would write a letter to their Sifu and be like, yo, you got to get rid of this chick. Wow. That shows you in that much more traditional, much more conservative time period, that shows you how much they really didn't like her, right? She was not the well-liked girlfriend. Man. And then I asked Chanchi Man, I said, wait a minute, you gave him a hard line about like, you're all going to leave if he doesn't break up with her? And he was like, yeah, we really didn't like her. And I go, did he break up with her? And they were like, no. I'm like, did you guys leave? And they're like, no. So it's like, yeah, the Wing Chun was just too damn good, right? Good. I mean, he is Yip Man after all, right? Oh, goodness. The stuff that people will go through. But during that time period, she supposedly exacerbated his opium addiction and made it much worse. And that would be in the pocket of time that Bruce Lee started learning Wing Chun. Okay. So there's another kind of deeper story that Yip Man was just not really in a position to be teaching a lot of the classes himself at that time. Let's say Bruce Lee rolls around by 1958 in the Wing Chun school. So Yip Man had been teaching for 8 years. So he has a number of senior students, including Wong Sun Leung Sung. Even I think Leung Sung may have even had his own school at that time. So he was already like, somewhat established with some seniors, so he could hand over some of the classes. Yeah. And so the reason why Bruce Lee ended up learning from Wong Sun Leung, a big part of that could be that Yip Man wasn't really available spiritually to teach classes at that time. Okay. He was in a really bad position. According to Sifu Leung Tang, the story was that at some point he had to overcome his opium addiction. And I've told this story before, very early in the podcast. And then he basically locked himself into a room with a vomit bucket and a wall bag, and went cold turkey and would just vomit in the wall bag. And when it was too much, he would punch the wall bag. And the story was even if this is
You said,
apocryphal
you
or
said
anecdotal.
vomit in the wall bag?
No, so vomited in the bucket.
Because
Say vom-
he vomited in the wall bag and then he punched it.
I've only had one. I've only had one coffee today. Well, you know what? I didn't mean to say that, but something like that scenario may very well could have happened, right? If he's trying to kick it cold turkey at some point, he's vomiting into the wall bag and punching it, right? Okay. No, so the story was that he would hit the wall bag whenever things got a little too hard, and then after, a weekend, a week, whatever it was, Yip Man emerges out of his room with bloody knuckles and free of his opium addiction, right? I don't know how true that is because I do know from conversations I had with Sonny Tang, was a very high-ranking student of the late Moyet, that in the late 60s, which would be about 10 years after I think the worst of Yip Man's opium problem, 10 years after Bruce Lee was in Hong Kong, that Yip Man carried around in his wallet on the top part. He had I remember when Sonny Tang told me this. I thought it was a very cool story. He said that Yip Man had a photo of Tang Sang at the top of his wallet.
Okay.
And of course, at that time, Tang Sang was a very famous chief inspector of the police, and it was almost like having like the PBA card or whatever, right?
Okay.
So if a cop pulls you over, you just go, "Hey, I'm with these guys," and then they tend to leave you alone, right? So
I've never had any of those.
According to Sonny Tang, that if Yip Man had gotten in trouble, perhaps for having opium on him or whatever, he would just need to show that. And that was in the late '60s when Sonny Tang was learning from Moyet. So it's kind of one of those things like. Well, then I tend to not believe Yip Man got over his opium addiction in the late 50s if he still needed to carry a photo of Tang Sang in the late 60s. So it's possible that he scaled back his opium addiction to just a bad habit. But the thing is, I don't really know because whenever you bring this up, many of Yip Man's students clam up. Some of his students are open with it. Leung Tang's generally open with it. Other students are open with it, and others because of very traditional kind of Confucian kind of ideas and bonds of their seafood. They don't even want to talk about it. It's unfortunate because it's an old attitude about drug use, being extremely stigmatized. Was it a good thing if Yip Man was like drug-addled and addicted to opium? Absolutely not.
Right.
But is it something that we can discuss? Yes. All right. It doesn't
discuss
take
this.
away. It doesn't take away anything from the person to discuss these things. Like people go, "Why are you bringing this stuff up about Bruce Lee and the drug letters or whatever?" Because it happened. All right. Like you're having an emotional response to it because you don't want it to be true, but it is true. And now this explains so much about, in the case of Bruce Lee, about his behavior, especially in the last year of his life. He had extremely erratic behavior. It explains a lot about his first collapse. It could potentially, though I will not confirm it, explain something about his death, right? But for people who are real Bruce Lee fans, not just the people who like watch Enter the Dragon, they're like, "Oh, I'm a big Bruce Lee fan." Like the people who know, like they can look at a photo of Bruce Lee in Hong Kong and be like, "Oh, that was at the premiere of Fist of the Unicorn." Or, "Oh, this was at the Fist of Fury premiere or whatever." Like, "Oh, this was when he was doing prep work for this movie or whatever," right? Like the fans who actually know shit about Bruce Lee, when they heard about it, they were like, "Oh, wow, that does explain a lot." When the super casual fanboys heard about it, like, "Why are you talking about these things?" Right? And for me, those are like the Yip Man students who don't want to admit what very clearly was the case, right? Does it take away anything from Yip Man that he had a very common addiction at that time? No. And also, it happened. All right? It doesn't, whatever you feel about it, it happened. And so I think that the state of Yip Man, because of this addiction, especially in the late 50s, early 60s, has something to say about who learned what and who was teaching at that time, because he was not around. So would you rather say Bruce Lee wasn't really learning from Yip Man because his sifu had an opium addiction and couldn't teach, or because Bruce Lee was a pure blood Chinese?
Damn.
You start to see this is how the sausage of legends are made.
Okay.
All right. All right. What's the next clickbaity title we got
Let's
here?
go
One
into
more. Give me a good one.
The next one is what really happened when Steven Seagal fought Bruce Lee. This is the best one.
It's not the best one.
How so?
Huh? Because
'Cause-
you cannot talk about what really happened in a situation that never happened.
No. I
Okay.
thought it did happen.
Yeah.
Mikey,
So apparently,
You told me it happened.
You know
told
what?
me you were there.
Lay off the bourbon in the mornings, all right? This is-
Bourbon.
so supposedly, because I'm like, again, I don't follow all this crap on YouTube, but apparently in some interview somewhere, Steven Seagal remembered, very much in the case of like Vic Moore, that he had met Bruce Lee, or that he had an exchange with Bruce Lee or something like that, right?
Steven
And
Seagal had to be like 12.
It's possible,
Yeah.
but I mean, Seagal, from what I understood,
fought
was from
Bruce Lee
the
when I was 12.
was from the LA area.
Okay.
So it's
Wait,
possible.
Steven Seagal was from that area.
I believe so, from LA. So it's possible if he was a young guy starting martial arts, that he went to, Ed Parker's Long Beach tournament was a huge tournament.
Okay.
And every year they would have all these karate practitioners practice and fight and all that kind of stuff. So if you were a up and coming martial arts guy,
yeah.
in Los Angeles, you probably went to Ed Parker's
And
tournament.
Steven Seagal was pretty tall probably at that
Well, I have no
age.
idea, but that's not even my point.
Right.
The point is that if you were in the martial arts world in
Yeah.
Los Angeles, you probably went to the
tournament.
Ed Parker tournament, and then you would see some, famous people there. And it's possible if you went there so if you were, in the martial arts LA scene, in the 60s and 70s, it's possible you went to a tournament, you saw Bruce Lee there. And very similar to like that story we heard about that guy, Edwin Rodriguez Pucho, that guy from the Dominican Republic who claimed to have learned from Bruce Lee
Yeah.
in the 60s.
Yeah,
All
that's
right?
my dude.
Yeah. When
I love him.
more than likely what happened is Bruce Lee visited the Dominican Republic with Jun Rhee in 1970, 1971, very brief visit. And this kid, Bruce Lee was tagging along Jun Rhee. It's really at the height of Bruce Lee's career not working out in Hollywood. So he's at the point now where Jun Rhee's like, hey, you were Kato a few years ago. Do you want to come and do a tour of the Dominican Republic with me to visit my Taekwondo schools, and you can be like the guest of honor and I'll pay for you. So it's like, this is like Bruce having to gig for a couple bucks.
Oh, I love it.
And so he goes to the Dominican Republic,
Love it.
breaks a couple boards. He's there doing some testing and stuff like that. And, maybe some young kid sees him in the Dominican Republic and then moves to New York, and fast forward 40 years later, I learned from Bruce Lee in the Dominican Republic, right? Yeah. So it's like often like there's a very thin thread of a connection. And over years, it's like a Leo Fong story about Bruce Lee. Over years, these things they start adding fabric to this story, right? So I have a feeling, if I'm being the most charitable to Seagal Sensei, all right? Maybe he saw Bruce Lee somewhere, like at an Ed Parker tournament or something like that. And then this story
And he
later becomes
challenged him
something
to a
else.
fight? Or he fought him?
I don't know, because I don't know what the story is.
Man.
I just know if that had happened,
Yeah.
okay, then we would have known about it way in advance. Because when Steven Seagal first came out on the scene with, Above
Hard
the
to
Law
Kill.
or Hard to Kill, right?
Yeah.
What marketing team wouldn't promote him as the guy who beat Bruce Lee at a tournament?
Right.
If that happened, right?
Yeah.
But see, so the thing is, you have to just think of it logically. Like now, these stories happened, and there's
Kept
no
it a
one,
secret
there's
all
no
this
one,
time.
there's no one ever around to see it. You know what I mean? And so it's like how. But they swear that the story was true. And you're like, where was this story 40 years ago? It's like Vic Moore and all of his fantasies about fighting Bruce Lee when everyone saw him not be able to stop one of Bruce Lee's hits from a mile away. And then later in the fight was everyone, who was there? There's no one ever there. And these stories are never told in a way that real history is always told. It's always told in this very kind of retroactive
Even
kind
that
of way.
Potato lens quality. Yeah,
right?
All right, shows the real.
So this is my challenge to KFG podcast listeners. All right. So we reviewed a couple of these here. Let me take a look at these. All right. So we talked about Shannon Lee bringing life to Bruce Lee.
Oh yeah.
We talked about Bruce Lee fighting a Goju Ryu master.
You gotta love Shannon Lee though.
All right, so here's what I'm going to do. Let's make a poll. All right,
Oh.
I'm going to make Andrew work a little bit, so he's going to have to put these on the screen. All right. Okay, I want the KFG audience to vote on which one of these subjects should I do a video on. Now, mind you, I didn't watch any of these videos, so I don't know what he talked about. So If I went on any tangents, I didn't mean to, malalign any of his videos here, right?
Not really.
But you give me like the ones let's say the top 2 or the top 3 that everyone likes. I'll research the topic. I'll watch the video, see if there's anything there. Do my own research, and then I will do my own clickbait video with a totally clickbaity thumbnail.
Yeah.
Like the real story about when Bolo punched Bruce Lee, right? Like whatever his thumbnail is, I'll go the realer story, right?
The realer. Oh,
okay.
Yeah.
So here we go. We're going to vote. You can put in the comments below.
All right.
Put the number. Okay. I'll say the number, the story, and then you can just put the number in the comment below, right? All right. Number 1 topic. Shannon Lee brings Bruce Lee back to life with new biopic. All right, you want me to talk about that? That's number 1.
That's number 1.
Number 2, what really happened when Bruce Lee fought the Goju guy? All right, that's number 2. Number 3, Mason Lee training for 5 years to be just like Bruce Lee.
I think that's the one I want.
I think no. Number 4, what really happened when a store clerk annoyed Bruce Lee?
That's the one I want.
No, yeah, the bodega.
You're right. All right, yeah, the
At
bodega
Louis
downstairs,
Bodega.
right?
Yeah.
Okay, number 5, Bruce Lee never wanted anyone to see this real fight.
I wonder which real
Number
fight.
6, ever wonder why Bolo punched Bruce Lee?
I have been
a
wondering,
great
especially
clickbait
lately.
title.
I've been wondering about that. When we met him, I was wondering that.
All right, number
I wanted
7,
to ask him.
sketchy things about Steven Seagal that we all ignored.
Yeah,
I'll make that one 7 thing. I'll make it 8 things about Steven Seagal that we didn't ignore.
We didn't.
All right. Okay. Number 8. Why Yip Man stopped teaching Bruce Lee. Okay. And now finally, number 9. What really happened when Steven Seagal fought Bruce Lee? Okay. So you have 9 options. Give me,
Okay.
I'll take the top 2 and I'll make my own like 6-minute long clickbait bullshit video.
Word.
I want to make my own a new playlist called KFG's clickbait bullshit, and I'll just make
great.
videos like that. All right,
Click-
cool. Well, hey,
That's
that's all
CBB.
I gotta say about that. All right, everyone. Well, I hope you enjoyed that episode of the Kung Fu Genius. As always, don't forget to subscribe to the Kung Fu Genius, hit that bell for notifications, and if you have any ideas for an episode, go ahead and put those in the comments below. And I see you laughing, Mikey. And as always, I'll see you guys next time.
Word is I'm a kung fu genius. Technique speaks for me, not lineage. Forget Jet Li, cause I'm the one. Many call me seafood, but to you I'm Seagung. And I produce masters. You surpassed us. Your kung fu stiffer than corpse and caskets. City Wing Chun is the house I built. Violate the gate and your blood gets spilt. Alex Richter, always the victor.
Yo, Dre, how you doing, man?
Oh, we gotta clap.
Oh, sorry, we got to do the clap.
Yeah,
All right,
well,
1,
You have the clap, remember?
2.
You've got the clap, Dre.
All right, Dre, ready? 1, 2, 3, clap.
Dre has the clap.
All right.
Let's wait for the siren to go by.
Oh, you just waiting to see if they're coming to pick you up. Have you noticed he does look a little
No,
like
that's
a
a fire.
like a cat burglar?
It's a fire.
He does.
You know
or
what
at
I mean?
least a turd burglar. All right, you ready? Okay. All right.
Stealing turds out the toilet.
Yeah, let's go with that, Dre.
Hey,
yo.
Hey.
All right. I don't care how good someone's f***ing was and how good someone's connection with the ground was. Who's walking back there? Is that Nicole?
No, that was me walking through. I know not to come to the crib.
Okay, all right.
I was still the man, Grandmaster Murphy.
All right. We are recording a podcast.
I don't know.
Okay.
I'm here for it.
Yeah, I'm also here for hearing you walking in the background during my podcast.
Yeah, I know you want to be in the star of the show with this one, but not this one.
All right, everyone. Well, I hope you enjoyed that episode of the Kung Fu Oh, Jesus, Dre, we got to finish here, all right?
Lots of bolo punching Bruce Lee.
Lots of the CG Bronson Lee.
Bronson Lee.
All right.
Don't say BronsonLee, Dre.
Yes, Bronson Lee was a character played by Tadashi Yamashita.
I'd love to see Dre say Tadashi Yamashita.
I would love to see that too.
All right, Dre.
Tadashi Yamashita. All right, peeps. On today's episode of the Kung Fu Genius, the genius will be attacking Goldenbell's clickbait videos. Lots of gems, lots of Bolo Yeung punching Bruce Lee, lots of, did you know that Steven Seagal, no.
Bronson Lee.
Looking like Charles
my
Bronson
God.
Lee.
Yeah.
All right, peeps. On today's episode of the Kung Fu Genius, the genius will be attacking the Goldenbell's clickbait videos.
Okay, no.
All right, peeps. On today's episode of the Kung Fu Genius, the what?
What?
What? Why are you looking at me? I already
Yeah.
told you what it
What
was.
was the problem with that?
There was no problem with
No,
that.
there was no
Dre.
problem with that. I didn't say anything.
Oh my God.
Andrew, play the tape back because he thinks I was making a face while he was doing that, and I want you to prove to him that I made no such face while he was doing his awful intro.
All right, peeps. On today's episode of the Kung Fu Genius, the what?
It's not alcohol, is it? It's mushrooms. You're tripping.
You're shrooming in the room, man.
Yo, we got to get going here.
The genius will be attacking Goldenbell Training clickbait videos. Titles. Damn it, dude. Damn, dude. The genius will be attacking Goldenbell Training clickbait. Bing dong. Come on, man. I'm doing Goldenbell Training's clickbait videos. Goldenbell Training's clickbait titles. Lots of gems. Lots of Bolo Yeung punching Bruce Lee. Lots of, did you know? Wait, what the?
What the hell?
Did you know Steven Seagal had CGI'd up on his hairline? The genius will be attacking Goldenbell's Training titles. No, that's not the one. All right, peeps. On today's episode of the Kung Fu Genius, the genius will be attacking Goldenbell Training clickbaity titles. Lots of gems. Lots of Bolo Yeung punching Bruce Lee. Lots of, did you know Steven Seagal's hairline was CGI'd in Above the Law? Lots of gems. No, wait.
What?
No!
You got it right, and then you repeated lots of gems.
Who does that?
You do that.
Why?
Oh my God.
I mean, it was also not really like kind of.
Come on.
It was kind of
Come
in
on.
the jaws of defeat too. We kind of just letting that one slide.
No.
Let's be honest.
Come on, that was legit.
We are letting that one
was
slide.
groovy.
CGIE.
Come on, I
and
flipped
the
that
hairline-y.
CGIE.
Okay, we'll let it go. We'll let it
Come
go.
on, that hairline.
Yeah, we are 100%
Come on.
letting that one slide.
You know why? Because that is the perfect intro to this episode. The energy of this episode, all right?